next questions we had someone ask is how to prepare a lesson and how much time to allow per activity. And Mindy, I think you had talked about the template you use, and you want to share that and talk to us a little bit about that.
Some notes here. I've just found in my many years of doing Bible class that when I'm preparing for it, it's easier if I have a template that I kind of go in and fill out. Kind of how we were saying, you know, that structure. And I don't always have every lesson be the same, but when I'm at least planning it, just to kind of help me on the teacher end of it. And so I have a template that I think was shared, and that might be on the screen at some point, but
Maybe no.
maybe later. But I try to have like a pre-class activity as they're coming in. I know it's a little different now with our Sunday mornings where they all kind of come in at the same time, but something when they first walk in that they can be doing. I try to have an introduction, kind of grab their attention and get them hooked to the lesson because I want them to want to be there. And so I might do an object lesson or something that just makes them a little intrigued, even if they've done their Bible lesson at home. You know, like, oh, why is she doing this? Like, how is this going to apply to what we're talking about? And then I'll kind of type out my main points for the story. I like to teach kind of the upper end of the elementary school age, and so I'll do like Abeka cards or like Google slide pictures and things. I like visuals when I'm teaching. And then I'll always have some review questions, like typed out for me that I can use, things that, what do I really want them to know? What are the most important parts of the lesson that I want them to take away? Our Bible curriculum that has all the My Hero God statements, that's a great place to put those in so they can have those. And then I think about the activity. Do I want it to be something that they take home? Do I want it to just be another game? How am I going to make this engaging on another level for them? Try to have movement. I try to always think, I remember back in college, the age of the kid is about how long they can sit still. And so I just try to keep that in mind. Okay, these kids are 7. So I need to, every 7 minutes, try to think of something where we can kind of shift and do something else. And then I always have at the bottom of my little template, if there's extra time. Because like if I go faster than I think I'm going to, or there's not as many kids in class, and so instead of having something for 14, only 3 are here, and so I always try to have, okay, we can review the Bible, books of the Bible, or do the little sword fights where they try to find the verse the fastest and stuff like that. So I just find when I'm planning, a week or 2 ahead of my lesson, just kind of going in and having that template where I can plug stuff in and then adjust it as I need to has just really helped kind of expedite the planning for me.
And so how do you, how is your template laid out? Just kind of visualize it in my head. You've got like greeting, prayer, the story, the lesson. Is that basically
It's all just
activity?
it's all just little boxes, and I just kind of go through and type it in as I'm going, and the activity, near the bottom. And if I need to rearrange stuff because I think this lesson needs it, then it's really easy for me to move it with typing. But then I'm comfortable with it, and so when I'm teaching, it's not like I'm reading a script at all, but it's kind of over to the side, and I can be like, oh, this is what I'm doing next. And I just find that that's really been helpful.
Yeah, one thing I've done too with that is when I teach, I put a time. Okay,
Yes.
5 minutes for this.
Yes.
I think this is probably going to take 10 minutes. And then if I realize, okay, I've already spent 20 minutes and I thought that was going to take 15, I'm running out of time already.
Right.
Yes.
So you've got to adjust as you go along.
Yes, definitely.
Or if your students are getting it quicker than what you thought that they were going to,
Right.
Yeah.
you'll have to kind of, readjust some things too.
It's always good to plan extra.
Yes.
And then to be at the end of class and be like, okay, now.
I'm going to sing for a little bit. Which is great. That's fine. Yeah, you got to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to go to plan B.
Yes, for sure. Yes, you have to pivot sometimes for sure.
And I think, Mindy, whenever you segment it like that, the way you were talking about it makes it less overwhelming for you.
Yes.
Because it really compartmentalizes what you're doing, and it doesn't. Your lesson prep does not seem as overwhelming as what it initially does whenever someone says, hey, you have to do this.
Right. And like we were talking about the shy teacher earlier, if you say, oh, you have 45 minutes and you are in charge. Like, that's overwhelming.
Yes.
Yes.
But when you
Yeah.
segment it or you break it down, you're like,
Yes.
okay, well, me talk, that could be 10 to 15 minutes,
Yes.
and the rest is different activities. So, eases some fears, I think, for sure.
Yeah, the others of us who like to talk and talk a lot.
Right.
When they 45 minutes, I'm like, where did 45 minutes go?
Yes.
I needed 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Of course, I would have filled that up too.
Right.
And some topics really, like when
Yeah.
you're doing like a Bible story,
Yeah.
I mean, that can be a lot easier to plan for sometimes.
sure.
Yeah.
When I remember a couple trimesters ago when I was doing the 7 churches of Asia
Oh, yeah.
in Revelation, I'm like, oh my lands, like how am I going to do a 45-minute lesson on, the letters to the 7 churches? But so then when I just got on my computer and was able to say, okay, how can I get their attention? Well, it has to do with letter writing. And so maybe we'll write a letter, or they'll open up a letter and try to figure it out. And when you have kind of a set structure that you can use, those intimidating topics can really be easier to manage, like you said, like in bite-sized pieces. Okay, just have to do a few minutes for this activity, and it just makes it a little less
And the
overwhelming.
folders that we have
Yes.
activities.
They do.
Those are a
Yes.
lifesaver.
Yes.
Saves you a lot of time.
Yes.
And a lot of things you can, copy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the first time I taught there, I went, okay, and I taught with Tammy.
Yeah.
And I was like, Tammy, and she goes, Laura, here's the folder. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I can do this now.
Yes.
It just relieves you because you're
does.
thinking, where can I find all these materials that I need and make it fun for the kids?
Right.
Yeah.
That they're going to learn. You just mainly want them to know what the whole, goal of the story is.
Yeah.
And what's going to solidify that.
Right.
So that was very helpful.
Yeah, the file folders and stuff are excellent.
Yes. Back to the My Hero God, one thing that we've done in the 6th grade class this trimester is those key takeaways. And as far as lesson planning goes, it can be a little overwhelming about the minute details of everything. But if you can just stick to like 1 or 2 takeaways and just keep coming back to that, I think that's really beneficial. And then what we've started doing is those My Hero God statements. We've kind of done like a fill in the blank, and then we keep going back to them. And that kids can now like take the statement and reference it back to a certain character or lesson or person in a story. And so that's been really helpful. And those are already created for you. So it's not like you have to come up with the takeaway. They're right there for
you
you.
do not have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you're just saying you take the My Hero God and you leave the blank, and the blank is referring to a character you've been studying.
Well, so
when you say
I wish
fill in
I
the
had the
blank.
example, yeah. But even something as simple as God keeps his promises, or and then
So
just
that would
take
be
away
maybe Noah,
promises,
or-
right. And then the kids have to fill it in. God keeps his, and then they fill in the blank. And then that statement, that was a review game I did, is we had them connect the key concepts or the My Hero God statements back to the lesson
That you had studied
that we
that
had studied
trimester.
that trimester.
That's good.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Don't be afraid was one, and then we're talking about the 12 spies, Caleb and Joshua. And so the kids were easily able to reference back to that.
That's great. That's a good idea. Good review game.
And if I can admit something as a professional, whenever I have,
Well,
here we go. Like
Did we say we were on the
whenever I do my lesson template every week, it's okay if it doesn't go exactly
Oh, yeah.
how the lesson says it's going to go.
It usually doesn't.
And I was just,
Rarely.
that was going to be what I was going to admit is like over the past 10 years, I don't even know if I can, like maybe 5 times in 10 years has it gone exactly how I had planned for it to. And that's okay. And that goes back to what she was talking about. As long as they leave the class knowing that statement, the My Hero God statement, and like the goal of the lesson, then you've done your job. And that's another compartmentalization that you can have in your brain, because there are going to be times that it's not going to go how you planned it, and you're going to feel like you're sinking, and you're going to start sweating, and you're going to think, especially to those that are not very comfortable going in there, you're going to start sweating, and you're going to think, oh no, I'm never going to do this again. Yes, you will, because it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay that it doesn't go exactly. And the kids, when they come back the next Sunday or the next Wednesday, they won't think that you have messed up. You will be the only one. And even your fellow, it's sometimes it can be intimidating to teach with those that have had more experience than you. And even the majority of the time that you feel like you're messing up, no one else sees that but you. And as long as those kids go and leave with what Molly was talking about, then you've done a great job.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And just flexibility is the key. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
it's
Right.
great to have structure, and it's great to have a lesson plan you've prepared for, and you're
Yes.
ready for class. But there's always going to be something that goes wrong.
Right.
And so you have to be willing to be flexible and bend with
Right.
the class. I mean, if you go in there with your lesson and you're not going to stray for that, and you're just going to read
Yeah.
read
Yeah,
it,
no.
that's not going to work.
It's not gonna work.
So.
We all get flustered and sweaty and
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
and red-faced.
And things start going wrong. You look at your other teacher and you're like, I need some help. It's not going like what I
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like to say,
Yeah.
you know what, boys and girls, this did not go the way Mr. Dillon thought it was going to. So let's all just sit down. Take a deep breath. 3, 2, 1. And it's really for you to take that breath.
Exactly.
But the kids, especially the smaller ones, they're going to take it with you,
Yeah.
and then you're just gonna be regrouped again,
Yeah.
and then you're just gonna go.
Well, and sometimes on the flip side, something that totally gets derailed can end up being like an amazing lesson that you weren't even, planning for it to go that way. I remember one time I don't even remember the lesson, but the kids were not understanding, and I was like, okay, we're just gonna fold a piece of paper and we're just gonna start drawing pictures. And I was just trying to have them, do symbols and stuff. And after class, my two lovely ladies in the back were like, that was amazing. And I'm like, I'm just glad to have survived that. And so sometimes those moments where you're like, okay, I just have to pull something random out of the hat. Sometimes those really can end up being lessons that you could have never planned for that end up being great.
Yeah.
So you just have to be able to take a deep breath
Yes.
and just think of something else.
Yep. And I just want to add this too, because this is something I've just practiced, and when I teach class, I think it's really important to pray before you start preparing your lesson. And sometimes I've been preparing a lesson and I get to a point and I'm just like, I am totally stuck. I don't know what I want to do with this. And I walk away from it and I pray and come back to it later, and it's just like something just always comes, and I know that's God answering the prayer of, please help me. I want to teach these kids what you want them to know.
Right.
And I want them to love you and honor you, and I need help and wisdom and guidance. And so that's always the number one thing we should be doing before we start preparing our lesson.
Right.
But in the middle of it, when you don't know what to do, because we're all going to have a lesson like that where we're like, "Ooh, this is kind of a topic that's difficult."
Right.
How do I approach this? What's the best strategy for this? So there's always going to be, especially in the older kids, 5th and 6th, because you talk about more in detail things, and some of those things in the Bible are
Yes.
kind of,
Yes.
maybe something you wouldn't normally talk about,
Right.
Right.
So,
Heavy topics,
they're heavy topics, and it requires a lot of wisdom.
Yes,
So
it does.
we need to be sure we ask the one in charge
Yes.
for help.
For sure.
Right.
All right. So anything else on preparing a lesson, or maybe how much time to allow for each particular thing in your lesson? Y'all have any ideas or suggestions on how to structure your class, about maybe how much time to spend on the story? I know you talked about it depends on their age. Like, so if you have a 5th grader who's 10, you would only want to spend 10 minutes on the lesson.
Kind of a good gauge, yeah.
Okay, so maybe 10 minutes telling the story would be the max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could always retell the story again in
Right.
a different way, but maybe have moved to a different spot in the classroom, or do something interactive, and then you can continue on with this story if it is going to be something that takes a little bit longer. Just to kind of have almost like a brain break, or we're going to have a pop quiz, not a pop quiz. But, we're going to give you a pop
Oh,
quiz.
boy.
Something where it can
Don't
be
want to be in her class.
something like, okay, if you think the answer is this, we're going to move to this side of the room or this side of the room, and just have
Yeah.
some kind of clear your mind and then come back. And because
Yeah.
some stories are going to take a little bit longer than just a few minutes to tell. To
And
do
something you're
justice.
talking about with movement, I think that's very important. I know we're going to go into behavior ideas and things, but just moving the kids. No one wants to sit for 40 minutes, especially a child. Just moving them, like you said, from one side of the room. Let's go over here. Let's stand and sing our song over here.
Right.
Everybody go sit over here. I mean, just move them.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I don't want to sit there for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Even in the
so-
pew adults, we start to get.
We start moving.
Yeah.
That's what I'm over
It's
here.
about, what do they say, 30 minutes is about all you can handle?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
some of us may be more depending on our age, apparently. I don't know about that. Dylan, I wanted to ask you, since you teach kindergarten, a 2-year-old, so say someone's teaching the 2 and 3-year-old class, how long is it? 2 minutes? They can only attend for 2 minutes, like with their attention span?
I definitely think that comes with knowing your kids and the expectations that you set at the beginning. There are times where, my 5-year-old kindergartners, sometimes they will sit for 30 minutes but it depends on what you're doing on the carpet. Like you can shift what you're doing. You can randomly start singing what you're saying. It just depends on what you're doing as the teacher. But definitely for those smaller ones, 2s and 3s, they're going to need to move. Come to the carpet, sing a song. All right, let's stand up. Let's go to our seats. And then, do a small snippet. Let's stand up. Let's go to the carpet. If just going back and forth like Laura and Mindy were saying earlier. But the 2s and 3s for sure, they need to move and they need a chance to move, and they can move while they're sitting. We can't forget that. Touch your nose, if you know, things like that. If you know, and just ask them questions, and they can touch their nose, they can raise their hand, they can touch their head if they know a certain Bible verse, or if they know a certain thing that you're asking, and then but definitely some sort of movement. They just can't sit there, but definitely I would say 2 to 5 minutes increments.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, like you're saying, 5th and 6th grade. Stand up, sit down. It's just like stand up if you think this, sit down. Just something to get their blood flowing. It's easy, and you don't have to come up with some grand game obstacle course.
There was once
stand up, sit
recently,
down.
What you just said reminded me of something recently that happened in my classroom at school, where I knew that we were about to transition from our morning meeting time to our reading time. And I needed a chance to adjust something on my computer before I moved into that lesson. And so what I had them do was to go get their workbooks from their cubby. I said, okay, boys and girls, what you're going to do is you're going to stand up, and you're going to walk and get your yellow workbook from your cubby, bring it to your red table, and come back to the carpet. And when we did that, there was a little girl's. Because normally when we get our workbook, we go straight into the workbook and start to do something. And there was a child that said, "Mr. White, we didn't even do anything with our workbook." And I said, "You know what? Mr. White just needed a minute to do something, and I needed you to do something while I had to do something." And I just kind of looked at him like that, and I said, "So, do we all make mistakes? Or do we all need time to think for just a minute?" And they say, "Yes, we do." And it was just like the funniest thing, because they realize those things, but you can kind of spin it and make it funny.